Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, This Ain't Your Granddad's LiDAR, Geiger-mode LiDAR. My name is Amy, and I'm the Operations Manager here at National States Geographic Information Council. If you're unfamiliar with our organization, NSGIC exists to advance effective national coordination of geospatial information by supporting state-level cooperation. We serve as a national forum for the development of capable and future-oriented geospatial leadership. If you'd like to get to know more about us, please visit our website, www.nsgic.org. Some reminders for our call today: all attendees have been muted on entrance. There will be time at the end of the presentation for Q&A, so please place your question into the chat box. They will be answered after the presentation and read aloud. Additionally, a recorded version of this webinar will be made available after, so please be on the lookout for that. And with that, I will now turn it over to the presenter. Thank you again for joining us. Rick?
Just checking, make sure I'm unmuted. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today on Geiger-mode LiDAR. Our objective today is to help you understand Geiger-mode LiDAR and how it can be best used for your state or your municipality. So I'll just dive right in. Maybe. Oh, is my screen's not sharing properly, or is it?
It is not.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Zoom always has that extra button I have to hit that I forget to hit. So now you should be seeing the screen.
We can see it
Excellent.
Perfectly.
So before I jump in to Geiger-mode, just a quick background on VeriDaaS so you know who you're talking to. I'm Rick Eagle. I'm the Vice President of Product Management at VeriDaaS. And my team handles any project management work with a project that you might do with the company, as well as develops products that are based on our Geiger-mode LiDAR data. The company was founded back in 2015 and really set up to be a data as a service type business. So we went out and we tried to find the best wide area technology that there was. And in 2019, we acquired the Geiger-mode systems and all exclusive rights to them from L3Harris. So that's the basis of today's conversation, is that Geiger-mode LiDAR that we acquired. Again, just a little bit of background on us before I dive into the Geiger-mode. We are now a full service geospatial provider. Company has about 75 people. And we do everything from LiDAR acquisition to ground survey to the classification of the LiDAR data, as well as to provide different products and analytics that are based on that data. Our team has been built with folks that really understand wide area mapping. Many of us come from a company that's mapped the entire United States, Western Europe. So we understand how to attack big projects and be able to deliver high quality data on time to our clients. So with Geiger-mode, the real unique thing about the technology is we have extreme levels of efficiency and high density at the same time. So in comparison to typical linear LiDAR, we tend to fly a good bit higher and faster, but that enables us to collect on a single sortie about 500 square miles. So we're collecting a massive amount of data in one aircraft sortie. And at the same time, we're collecting at a very high density. We can collect at over 100 points per square meter. Quite often, we're collecting at around 12,500 feet, which is a 70 points per square meter product. And the video here is showing if we were up at 16,000 feet, we would be collecting a 30 point per square meter product. So very high densities and very high collection rates. The other unique thing about the way that Geiger-mode system works, the one that we purchased from L3Harris, is that we get this multi-look, the way the laser moves around this cylindrical cone that you see here on the screen. And what that enables us to do is it sort of paints the sides of all the buildings. It helps us get great foliage penetration by getting a lot of different look angles. It eliminates shadows and eliminates voids and really provides a superior product because of that multi-look angle. And overall, what this does is this enables us to get a single data set that's a very high density that can be used for multiple things and provides really great return on investment to our clients. Geiger mode is somewhat new to the general industry, but it's not new. Harris started developing the technology with a consortium for the Department of Defense back in 2003. And along the way, they collected, over, 1 million square kilometers or 100 million square kilometers. Sorry, 1 million square miles. I was going back and forth between square miles and square kilometers. 1 million square miles of data for the DoD. So the system has really been tested and used quite a bit. The second generation sensors Harris brought out after the technology was declassified in 2015. And they flew several projects. They did some USGS projects. They did some projects for some utilities, but really their cost basis was a little off. They have a military setup for doing defense contracts. So they try to fly high. They try to do certain things in order to get the cost down, and really it didn't fit their business model. So when they merged with L3 in 2019, we were fortunate enough to buy the technology from L3 Harris. We've now collected over 100,000 square miles of data ourselves. We've done multiple USGS projects, and we work quite a bit with public utilities collecting data for them. We're really excited that just this year, we were able to get additional intellectual property rights from Harris. That enables us to actually go in and improve certain things with the way the data is processed. It enables us to build more sensors, and we're really excited about the Geiger mode's future now that we have all of that IP. So we want to leave you with, the thought that, Geiger mode has been around for a long time, but now we feel that it's really in the hands of people that understand how to use it commercially, understand how to fly very cost effectively, and provide valuable data to government municipalities. So for us, time to insight is really critical. Everything that we like about this sensor, and we've set up our own processing infrastructure, our own aircraft operation to provide very short time to insight to clients. So we have 3 Geiger mode sensors. We have those in different aircraft. We now have 2 new King Airs just recently this year. And we have the capability with that, those 3 platforms to collect about 1,500 square miles per night at 70 points per square meter. So a lot of data very fast. And we do operate our aircraft with world-class operators who've been doing survey work for a long time. So they know how to do uptime and make sure that the planes are flying and we're collecting data whenever we can. With all this data, it's also very important that we have a large processing infrastructure. And we chose not to go to the cloud. We built our own processing infrastructure at a co-location facility called Flexential. That enables us to have dedicated compute power to handle the data as it comes off the aircraft. So we have over 5,000 cores, 4 petabytes of storage. We have plenty of processing power to keep up with the data as it's coming off the aircraft. We also have been using AI to classify and extract features and information out of the data sets. And again, all of this to try to get time to insight to our clients, be able to have very fast delivery for your customers like yourselves, and short time to insight. So a little bit in the technical side of how the data works in comparison to a standard linear sensor. So I have here on the left some information about a Regal 1560i sensor. And typically, or most sensors are like this. There's a little bit bigger spot size for the linear sensors. And it's a big beam that's going down through the canopy. And it's recording the first returns, as you guys are probably well aware, and the last returns, and different returns throughout that canopy. In our system, we have a smaller beam size. And every time that our beam is fired, we have the opportunity to collect 4,096 returns. We're actually measuring at the single photon level. So all of that information is coming back to this highly sensitive Geiger mode array. And we can get all of those returns every time the laser pulses. Those returns can happen anywhere throughout the canopy. They can happen at the top of the trees. They can happen at branch structures within the tree. They can happen down on the ground. So unlike linear, each one of those pieces of information, we do not know whether it's first return or last return, but through the processing software, we know where those points are. And we're getting very good foliage penetration and very good tree structure, which I'll show you in a couple of slides. So just to kind of go through the math a little bit, as I mentioned, that every time the laser pulses, we get up to 4,096 returns. The laser's pulsing at 50 hertz or 50 kilohertz. So if we look at that, we're getting 205 million measurement opportunities every second. So tons of data coming back to the sensor. And as I mentioned back on that video slide, as the laser's being fired, it is being directed around this conical shape that's down onto the ground. So what happens is we get overlapping frames as the laser's being moved around that. And then as the aircraft moves forward, we get more overlapping frames. And then as the back half of the cone goes over the area, we get even more overlapping frames. So I'm going to show you kind of a little illustration here as just to kind of give you an idea of sort of what's happening. These frames are building up. So for every point on the ground, we're getting lots of different look angles, which helps us with the foliage penetration, helps us get really uniform data. We plan almost all of our missions at 50% overlap. So when we do the math, we're getting about 30 unique looks of every point on the ground. So when we're flying at that 12,500, that 70 points per square meter altitude that we do quite a bit with our utility clients, we have about 1,000 measurement opportunities every square meter. Not every one of those measurement opportunities are coming back from the camera, depends on what the terrain is, but we get lots of data back into the camera. So what do we do with all that data? We take that data and we put it through a proprietary voxel processing that looks at all those points and really decides where the best points are to keep that represent the features on the Earth. So the first step of that processing is to take all those look angles and all the information that comes back from the IMU of the aircraft and do an adjustment. We do a calibration and registration. And what happens is this is like a photogrammetric bundle adjustment where we're taking all this different looks and we're making small tweaks. The software is able to look at very specific things that jump out in the data, like corners of buildings and things like that. And it's able to match those up with the different look angles and make these fine adjustments. So where the surface might be in one look slightly off, as we make those adjustments, that surfaces are all being brought together and we have a very uniform product as it's coming out of the calibration processes. We then go through a process we call aggregation. And essentially, when the output of this process is a very uniform, standard LAS 1.4 point cloud. Is there a question? I just heard it in. Okay. And then what the process does is, depending on what final point density the client wants, we set up
in the webinar.
Hi, Ashley. What's up?
Eric, I think someone answered their phone, but they're muted. You
okay, sorry
about that.
I didn't know if I was coming through or something. So as I was saying, what we do is we set up the voxel cell to get the point density we want on the ground. So that sets up the 2x2 array. So if the voxel matrix is set for 30, we have a voxel size of the 0.1825. And what the algorithms do is it goes and looks at all those points that were collected, and it statistically determines what's the best point to represent that cell. So we get a very uniform product. And then as we get tree structure, we then get much more points as it goes up the kind of the tomograph here and builds up. And I have an example of that so you can see. So this is a product that we flew at 12,500. We set the algorithm to have a voxel cell to provide 30 points per square meter on the ground. And through this fairly thick canopy, we were able to get all those ground points. There was cells of points to represent all those. But then as we went up the tree structure, this particular product ended up being 202 points per square meter. So very dense data, very good tree structure information within this 30-point product. In addition to the product, the high definition and the product density, we also end up with that registration process that we talked about earlier, very, very accurate data. So all of this data, no matter whether we're flying at 10,000 feet or whether we're flying up to 16,500 or 18,000 feet, is always going to be QL1 data, always well within a 10 centimeter vertical accuracy and a 30 centimeter horizontal accuracy. But when we fly towards the lower end of that area, that range, at around that 12,500 foot level, we're actually at about a QL0 accuracy with below 5 centimeter vertical accuracy. So the data is extremely accurate. And the data that we're showing you here represents many collections that we've done and kind of graphed over on this to give you guys an idea of what the different missions have provided. So just one kind of last slide here on the foliage penetration. This is an area out in Boulder Creek, California. And this is an area that, those trees that you see, this video indexes here or repeats. These trees are very tall. They're about 200-foot redwood trees and fairly dense in their structure. And you can see here the level of detail that we can get on the DTM, even in that kind of a situation where there's large tree structure. You can see the very detailed walking paths that are underneath the area. There's even some very small lines here. They're probably animal migration paths. So very accurate DTMs, even under heavy foliage penetration. So the next thing I'm going to shift to here is talking a little bit about the use cases. The fact that we do this high density product for folks really enables that the data can be used for many different reasons. And when you're trying to put together a BAA, you're trying to pull together a consortium of stakeholders to do a project, the fact that we have this data that's so rich in its quality and point density really enables you to use it for a lot of different purposes. And I'm going to step through some of those right now. So we do a lot of different industry sectors, but these are the primary ones that we work on. We work a lot in the utility industry. We do some work in transportation, infrastructure resiliency, government mapping, climate, smart cities. Those are kind of the primary ones that we work on. And this high definition data, as I mentioned, really becomes a key enabler of us being able to basically, we always retain with most of our clients a copy of the raw data. And we process the data as we showed in that previous slide at different point densities. So if we were doing a government client, oftentimes we'll process the data at 8 points per square meter and do a very high quality QL1 product. That can be put in the public domain. And then the higher density product can be used to meet the needs of different stakeholders, as well as to allow us to be able to resell that data to go after some of these markets. So to start out, again, I mentioned utilities is one of our primary customer bases right now. And we use the data for a lot of things for utilities. But the first two on the list here on conflation and asset management and vegetation management are the top two. Because we do get this high definition data, most utilities, and when they fly LiDAR, can maybe fly corridor collect over the transmission lines, flying very low, whether they fly in a helicopter, whether they fly in a fixed wing aircraft. We're flying at 12,000 feet, and we can get accurate information, not only on the transmission, the larger wires, but we can get information on the distribution wires and even some of the secondary wires that are running over individual properties. That enables us to provide a sort of territory-wide and network-wide set of information for the utilities to work on to reduce their risk. They use the data for everything from their cut and trim programs to look at growth models, fall-in risk of certain trees. We do things from looking at analytics on dead and dying trees and which ones present the most risk to fall into areas. We're able to do things like pole location and pole lean with the accuracy level of the data. be able to do ingress and egress studies for forest fire issues on what happens if there is an event within the area. Terrain analysis, conductor to water, lots of different analytics that we're able to do with this high quality data set. We also have clients using it from a biomass area to look at carbon credit trading, to be able to calculate fuel burn and fuel fire risk for wildfire, and being able to look at post damage assessment. So the fact that this one single data set is such high quality, our utility clients can use it for many purposes within their companies. Another example of where the data is often used is in telecommunication. This model here is of downtown Chicago, and that's a really cool building. It's this wavy building. It's called the Aqua Building. So those waves aren't distortions in the LiDAR. That's actually the way that building looks. It's a neat building, but you really see in this image the ability for us to get extreme levels of detail. And as the communications continues to be driven towards smaller and smaller wavelengths, they're having to put their towers closer and closer, and also in some cases rely on line of sight to get communication between two towers. So we're able to get these highly accurate data sets. You can see the rooftop furniture, things like that, all the kind of things that would block a normal signal but not be picked up in normal QL2 or QL1 LiDAR. We provide a data set that can really help support their network optimization. Another prime area and set of stakeholders that we can pull in is on flood monitoring. The data that we collect is at much higher accuracy than even QL1 data, and can get an extremely high accuracy DEM. And that not only enables to get a high quality DEM, but it also enables to pull out some of the small features that can impact the flood models, from exactly where culverts are to things that might block water flow. You can see in the lower picture here the level of accuracy that we pick up on that DTM. The data that we've done has been used by states. North Carolina uses it for their flood management platform. And one of the reasons, if you look at this image in the upper right, you can kind of see this V that is in the tree canopy. There's actually a creek under that. And you can see the level of quality of the water body that is being detected underneath that canopy. And as we zoom in, you can see, how well we can determine the shoreline, even underneath that canopy. And that really is helpful when it comes to doing accurate flood modeling. We believe our data is very high quality, and as the 3D program is coming into focus with the federal government, this data really does provide high definition QL1 data that supports many of their initiatives. Talk a little bit now about climate resiliency and forest structures. Being able to do individual tree segmentation and do things like you see in these images where we're actually identifying the center lines of all the individual trees. That helps us in a lot of different things and a lot of different analytics, from everything from fire mitigation to be able to do accurate fuel burn modeling by being able to see the understructure, the trees that might be laying on the forest floor. As well as when we get this kind of level of detail, we can get much more accurate fuel burn calculation studies. It also helps with things like planning on evacuation routes and other things. We've used the data for post-fire events. The fact that we can see very good terrain underneath some of the, even after an event, we can do some mudslide analysis and things like that. We bring up this thing because not only do we use some of these analytics for our utility clients, but there seems to be a lot of infrastructure money out in the last couple of bills. And I think that's an opportunity for the states to reach out to the federal government and get different types of funding and stakeholders that can help with projects. We also have done a lot of projects and work on renewable development, whether it's wind farm or solar farm placement, sun angles, the ability to do weather analysis and wind analysis for a type of a wind farm. So all sorts of different ways that the data can be used and maybe tap into some funding that are out there with the Inflation Reduction Act and the money that has gone into green energies. Next, I'll touch a little bit on DOTs. It's very interesting. Our level of quality and accuracy of the data approaches what a mobile mapping van can do. It's not as accurate as a mobile mapping van, but we can really get good center line, good curve edges, a lot of the information that needs to be derived for a DOT at a fraction of the cost per linear mile of a mobile mapping van. So this really enables a DOT to get their entire network mapped at a level of quality that previously was not even close to being possible. So there's all sorts of things that we've been able to extract from the data, from paint lines, guardrails, medians, signposts. Here you see an ETOD or a TOD terrain obstacle detection example for airports. There's some funding in that area as well. So lots of different information that can be pulled out of the data sets because of its high density that provide more use cases for the data. Next is sort of the strategic intelligence side. And again, there's some funding from Homeland Security on certain things. And I'm going to scroll through some pictures here of a port in Seattle. And you'll be able to see here just the level of detail that you can get on the rail yards, on the shipyards, and some other things. So that if you're looking for infrastructure robustness projects, the data really supports those. Here you see how well the center lines are done on the roads, the rail network yard here, the port and the information that's on the port. We've done stuff to track actual movement of different types of containers for some folks. And you can see the level of detail. So just a set of examples there of ways that the data can be used. And I think stakeholders that can be pulled in and how states can work with different people to, share the cost of data collection. I want to go through just a couple of product slides of the things that we typically deliver for our commercial clients or our government clients. Starting with, as I mentioned before, we can process the data. Typically, we're collecting at anywhere from 30 to 70 points, depending on how high we fly. But we can process that data at any density, depending on what the client needs. These are some examples from Santa Clara, California at 30 points per square meter. They've been colorized, but you can see the level of quality of the point cloud and what can be pulled out. We also provide intensity images. Because of the multi-looks that we get and the data that we come in, we actually can oversample these images to get a 7-centimeter resolution black and white image. We collect intensity a little differently than what a standard LiDAR does, but the resulting product looks very much like a standard LiDAR intensity image. We're measuring actually reflectivity rather than intensity. But you can see here the level of fine detail, all the railroad tracks that can be pulled out of that high quality intensity image. We do a lot of work with DTMs, whether it's a hydroflattened DTM for, to meet all USGS specs. But you can see here as we strip away the LiDAR data, again, the quality of the ground that has been imaged underneath that canopy. And then there's a whole host of other things that we've done with the data, and that can be done with the data. We do a lot of different layers for forestry for our utility clients, from the hillshades, through all of these different models that can help understand what that forest canopy is and be able to do analytics on it. So just kind of trying to show you what we can do and what can be done with this high level of data. So kind of wrapping up here, one of the things that we do with some of our government clients, with what we've done with Arizona, is we can enter into a kind of a public-private partnership for a USGS project and a BAA. And with this, what we do is, because we're retaining a copy of the high density data sets, and we have the ability to resell that data, we can provide an in-kind contribution to any type of project like that. But that really helps basically be able to take care of the commercial stakeholders that you guys need for many of your projects. We can be that commercial stakeholder. That helps us be able to work with states, and we really like to do that in order to kind of drive these projects forward. Just one example of a success story. We did several USGS projects for the state of Arizona. The first one was over the Phoenix area in Maricopa County and Pinell County. That was over a 5,000 square mile collect. Again, we collected the data at a density that was 30 points per square meter and delivered it to the client at 8 points per square meter to put in the public domain. And then was able to share that data for some folks that needed the higher density data. We just recently completed another collection in northern Arizona. That data was just delivered to USGS. I think we delivered it about a year ago to our partner. It was about a 5,800 square mile area. We have a lot of good data around like Lake Powell, the Grand Canyon, Flagstaff. And again, same kind of philosophy where the data was collected to support a 30 point per square meter product, but an 8 point per square meter product was delivered and put into public domain. So this gives you an idea about how we make arrangements with various municipalities to do a data collection for a USGS project. Jenna has been a great partner at the state of Arizona, and you can read her quote here. But she's done just a really amazing job of working with us. And, we've been able, I think, to be a good vendor for them and deliver extremely high quality products quickly so that they could get their time data sites. So I'll leave you, I have a video here of airfield out in Santa Clara, California. And we really think this kind of is neat. There is a blimp hangar there that dates back to World War II that you see here in the image. And when we flew over that structure, the top part of the canopy of the structure did have a skin over it, but it was going under renovation, so that skin was off. And here you can see that the LiDAR was able to penetrate, and we actually got the inside of this blimp hangar, which we always find is pretty neat and something to show. But we'd like to leave you with, Geiger mode really is, it's an unmatched high definition LiDAR product that can support so many use cases. And that really, the fact that we can support so many use cases really kind of unlocks the opportunities for you to put stakeholders together for different projects. Also, our ability to collect at such a high capacity and our processing systems and our AI enables us to turn data very quickly for folks. We can get data in the hands of people very much faster, I think, than a lot of the other traditional vendors. And that all starts with the Geiger mode data and the way it's processed and the things that we can do with it. And then the ability for us to process at multiple densities really enables us to engage with states to be able to create these private public partnerships, retain copies of the data, and for us to be the commercial stakeholder in some of these efforts. So that is what we have for today. And again, thank you so much for your time. I think we ended just a touch earlier than our target, which is good. And hopefully we have a lot of questions that I'm very happy to answer.
Thank you, Rick, for the presentation. We do have a good bit of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and dive in. The first one is from Shauna. She's asking, since you're flying so high, what is the smallest area that you can fly?
It depends on what the efforts for, but we like 1,000 square kilometers. That really becomes a sweet spot, and where we can really start to get into our efficiency. But depending on the client, we can fly a smaller area. The plane is flying pretty fast, so a 20-kilometer flight line is the shortest we ever fly. And usually about 100-kilometer flight line is a typical short flight line for us.
Zach asked, what is the cost comparison versus QL1 and QL2 LiDAR?
So at a very high level, we are very competitive with QL1 products because we have the efficiency that what we gains over that kind of type of collection. We hit that area. Sometimes we can even price very competitive to a QL2, depending on what the area is, what the secondary sales opportunities can be. But just from a cost structure, we're very competitive with general QL1 type collections.
Joshua asks, is the relativity measure in terms of IR wavelength?
Ask that one more time.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. Is the reflectivity measure in terms of IR wavelength? That's a mouthful.
I'll try, and if I miss, maybe they can ask the question again. So we are actually measuring reflectivity based on the number of returns that come back to the sensor. Brighter objects, we get many more returns off of in all the different look angles, so that we can tell which objects have higher reflectivity. So by looking at the different number of returns that are coming back into the sensor, we can take that, and we've correlated that to regular linear LiDAR intensity values. And the algorithm basically then creates that reflectivity range and scales it so that it's on par with standard linear LiDAR intensity.
Jeff asked, can you expand on LiDAR for QL1? I am aware of one project in New York that USGS purchased off the shelf from Harris. This was an existing project that was downgraded to QL1. When that was done, I believe they had a problem with ground point return, so USGS reflew the project with a more traditional sensor. This might be because it was an existing project and not initially intended for QL1.
So we are familiar with that project. That project was flown higher than what we would have flown it. And it was also flown full-blown leaf on in the July-August timeframe. No LiDAR can see through leaves. So if the canopy is so dense that you are standing on the ground and you look up and you can't see the sun, then you're not going to get ground points when you're on a full-blown leaf on collection. So I'm not completely aware of exactly where that was within the whole AOI, because we collected along with Harris most of upstate New York. But in the areas where there was really dense canopy, because it was flown in summer and full leaf on and flown even higher than we normally would, the ground penetration wasn't as good as it should have been for a USGS project.
Matt says, the detail of the data and data products being demonstrated is an order of magnitude more refined than the standard USGS 3-depth QL levels to support bare earth DTMs. So what standards and benchmarks are these fine-grained data and products using or assessed to? Scaled adaptations of the USGS bare earth DTM spec, scaled adaptation of national map accuracy standards?
Okay, see if I don't know if I'll properly answer this. We typically, if we're doing a project, it depends on who we're doing the project for. When we do DTM work and some of this forestry work for utilities, we're specifically doing it for that customer specification. We do, though, deliver to counties and local agencies directly to the USGS QL1 specification for their DTM. So I believe half-meter spacing, all the water flattening, the level of extraction for the brake lines. We follow the 3-depth specification when we're delivering to a state or local agency.
Nathaniel says, some of the measures frequently used for forest analysis in California are density slicings, band return density by elevation bands above the ground, and percentile elevations above ground. Some early testing against Geiger-mode LiDAR seem to indicate that those metrics don't work well with the voxel sampling methods used in the processing of the data. Anyone else run into similar challenges? I think that might be a general question for the audience. And please feel free, Nathaniel, to come off mute if you'd like to explain more or ask the question.
Yeah, happy to do so. So some very early testing, and this was, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago against some sample data that we got from VeriDaaS, seemed to indicate that the voxel sampling methods produced a very regular distribution of points above ground within vegetation that does not work well with some of the metrics that are based on the irregular distributions of point returns above ground. And I was wondering if there are analogs to those types of measures that are in practice using Geiger-mode LiDAR, or whether there's anyone else that's looked at it in detail for forestry analysis that uses similar types of metrics for vegetation density.
Any hands being raised to answer that?
I do not see anyone currently. Well, thank you for Nathaniel for coming off and asking.
Yeah, Nathaniel, we would love to chat with you about that. I'm familiar with that sample that we did with you. We have a new group that's joined us, and they have a lot of experience with forestry analytics. And I'd love to put you in touch with someone who is a lot smarter than I on that one, and talk through that. And I think we maybe can provide some workarounds to get you what you need.
Okay, thank you.
Zimmerman asks, is land cover and land use classification still possible in comparison to linear LiDAR plus imagery? Oh, and a second part to that question was, can you capture drainage infrastructure using the oblique capture and overlap?
So the answer to the first question is yes, for the land cover. Some of the tools may not be tuned for Geiger mode, but we could look at that, and we could do very similar land cover work that happens with linear. We do pick up a lot of the drainage features. We have a 15-degree oblique look angle. So it can be a little bit lower than like a Regal sensor that might have a 60-degree or a 30-degree on each side look angle. So depends on a little bit on which drainage structures you're looking at. But that answer is definitely answered just from the look angle. We're at 15 degrees. So anything that is shown up within that, we usually pick up those features.
David asked, how does Geiger mode compare the example pros and cons to Hexagon's SPL system?
We're definitely better. Just kidding. The SPL system, is a little bit different than what we do. We think that our results are superior to theirs, but they probably think the same. We're happy to look at some data and do a comparison, fly some areas. But we definitely get very good, high quality data in comparison to the SPL.
And Matt asked, how do you serve the data to your clients? Do you provide them with all the files or do you have a platform? I'm sorry. I didn't read it all. Do you have a platform where clients can access the data through VeriDaaS servers? It seems like Geiger mode can produce large data volumes, so this is why I ask.
Yes, so we do work with the clients to do both. So we will oftentimes deliver the actual files and download them. We do that quite often, but we do store the data in an object store. We work with Esri, we're an Esri partner, and the data can be pulled through the Esri platform. We also work with some other partners, so we can set up a data store and store data for a client and enable them access to our storage facility. So we can do it either way.
So it looks like that was the last question in the chat box. We do have a good 12 minutes left. If anyone else has a question they would like to ask, feel free to pop one in the chat, or you could even come off mute and ask. Well, if we're waiting, Rick, would you like to say any last words? This is a great presentation.
No, just want to thank everybody for their time. Hopefully, I was able to convey to you what Geiger mode is and how it's different from linear LiDAR, and also how it's the same, like how the products that we're delivering fit nicely into your kind of current workflow. So if anybody has any additional questions, I'm certainly happy to answer them. And Tammy Peterson, who's our VP of Marketing, is also on the call. Tammy knows many of you. You can send questions through her as well.
We actually had one more for Matt while you were speaking. Geiger mode is a great innovation. Is there anything new coming in this technology space that you are excited about?
Well, we are very excited, as I mentioned very early in the presentation, about now having the code, both from a processing standpoint as well as the full designs of the sensors themselves, that enable us now to make the next generation systems. And those aren't going to be tomorrow, but they are going to come from us. And the ability to continue to boost the power of the laser, be able to pick up even finer features, lots of different things that we're thinking about and working on for the next generation of this technology.
Well, I think that was the last question. I would just want to thank Rick and the VeriDaaS team for putting on today's presentation. This was very informative for our members. I know I asked you, Rick, any last words, but any last comments before we sign off?
No last comments after the last comments.
Yeah. Well, one more. I'm sorry. Jim asked, Rick, what applications of this new capability excites you the most?
It's really being able to see small features just begins to unlock so many things. And like I said, a lot of what we've done is with the utility industry, but we've compared different samples that they get, flying helicopters, and we're flying, at 12,500 feet and getting the same level of detail on power lines. And being able to do those two things at the same time, fine details and massive areas, really is what Geiger mode kind of just starts to unlock. And then like all the things that you can think through of seeing small things, but I need it over a big area, whether it's road center lines or curve edges and things like that. It really does start to unlock our thought processes of what can be done with remote sensing data.
And then Matt asked, what are the downsides of Geiger? There has to be some.
Not that I would talk about on a
yeah.
The technology, we are flying higher, so we do have to watch the weather. We have to make sure that, we can get good production out of the system. We fly at night, which is a big benefit. Winds are calmer, air traffic's calmer, lots of good reasons why we fly at night. But on the other hand, we don't collect imagery, so that can be seen as a downside. Those are kind of things, but in general, we work with the data quite a bit and are able to kind of mitigate anything that comes out of the sensor and really provide a high quality end product to the client.
It looks like, Rick, you're getting some thank yous in the chat from our audience. Yes, this was a great presentation. Thank you again, Rick, for putting this on, and the VeriDaaS team for coming on today. And thank you to the audience. This has been great participation today. So we really appreciate this. And we'll give some folks a couple minutes back to their afternoon.
All right, thanks everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Amy.